Step outside right now. Feel that chill in the air. Maybe it's a bit cold, a bit gray, a bit miserable. Now, imagine that cold doesn't stop. It doesn't stop for 100 years, or 1,000, or 10,000. The temperature keeps dropping. Countries disappear under ice. The sea shrinks back. Animals you've never seen roam in herds across frozen plains. And somewhere in all of that, a small group of humans decides they are not going to die. This is how they pulled it off. To understand what surviving the Ice Age actually meant, you need to understand what the Ice Age actually was. It wasn't just winter. It wasn't just a bad few years. At its worst, around 20,000 years ago, ice sheets a mile thick covered a third of the entire planet. Britain, buried. Northern Europe, buried. Most of North America, buried. Sea levels were 120 meters lower than today because so much of Earth's water was just frozen solid. The average temperature was only about 6 degrees colder than now. That sounds like almost nothing. But 6 degrees is the difference between a green field and a glacier sitting on top of it. Scale does something to numbers, and your ancestors were alive in all of it. No buildings, no coats from a shop, no way to turn up the heating, just them and the cold, and every large predator on Earth also trying to stay alive. The first thing that kept them alive was fire. Humans had discovered fire long before the Ice Age. Evidence goes back nearly 1 million years. But during the Ice Age, fire stopped being useful and became everything. Without it, you were dead within days. With it, you had a chance. Fire did 3 things. It kept you warm, obviously, but it also kept things away from you. Because the Ice Age wasn't just cold. It was full of animals that were bigger, faster, and far more dangerous than anything alive today. Cave lions, giant hyenas, cave bears that stood taller than modern grizzlies and were angrier than anything you can imagine. A fire at the entrance to your shelter was the only thing standing between you and something that wanted to eat you. The third thing fire did is the one most people don't think about. It cooked your food. And cooking your food meant your body pulled more calories out of every single meal. In a world where finding food was a full-time job and some days you found nothing, that difference in calories could be the difference between waking up the next morning or not. Archaeologists have found hearths in caves showing signs of continuous use. Fires kept burning for thousands of years in the same spot, passed down, maintained, protected like the most valuable thing in the world. Because it was. But fire only keeps you warm when you're next to it. The rest of the time, you needed something else. Your ancestors figured out how to sew. Not just wrap themselves in a skin and hope for the best. Actually sew. Fitted, layered, tailored clothing, using needles made from bone. We have found bone needles going back 50,000 years. Tiny, precise, sharp enough to pierce leather, made by hand with no tools except other rocks. They hunted large animals, mammoths, reindeer, bison, and they used everything. The thick fur became insulation. The hide became the outer layer. Tendons became thread. Bones became needles. What they built was essentially the same system a modern Arctic explorer uses today. A warm inner layer to trap heat, a tough outer layer to block wind and wet. Engineered for survival, in conditions that would kill an unprepared person in hours. They figured this out with rocks and dead animals. Tens of thousands of years before anyone wrote it down. Staying warm only matters if you're also eating. And finding food in an ice age is not like finding food anywhere you have ever been. Most plant life was dead or buried. Rivers froze. The landscape for hundreds of miles in every direction could be flat, white, and completely empty. And yet, your ancestors ate. Enough to survive. Enough to raise children, enough to spread across the entire planet during this pattern. They hunted in coordinated groups, not just chasing things and hoping. Actual strategy. They studied animal migration routes, planned ambushes, drove herds of mammoths toward cliffs or into boggy ground where the animals got stuck and couldn't run. A single mammoth kill could feed a group for weeks. One successful hunt bought time. Time to rest. Time to make better tools. Time for children to learn. They also fished under ice. They knew which frozen rivers still held fish below the surface, and they cut through to get to them. Ice fishing is not a quirky modern hobby. Your ancestors were doing it out of necessity in minus 30-degree temperatures. And when they made a big kill, they didn't waste it. They buried meat in the frozen ground, which acted like a natural freezer. So, you've got fire, you've got clothes, you've got food. Now you need somewhere to sleep. That isn't the open tundra. At night, in winter, surrounded by cave lions. Caves worked, and humans used them, but caves aren't everywhere, and your ancestors didn't just wait until they found one. They built. In parts of Ukraine and Russia, archaeologists have found shelters constructed entirely from mammoth bones. Skulls, tusks, shoulder blades, leg bones, arranged into circular frames, then covered with animal hides. Some of these structures were large enough to house multiple families. They had central fire pits, storage areas dug into the frozen ground below the floor. Why mammoth bones? Because in a treeless, frozen landscape, wood was almost impossible to find. So they used what was available. When your only building material is the bones of an animal the size of a truck, you find a way to build with it. These weren't desperate last resort shelters. They were homes. Planned, constructed, lived in for extended periods. Some sites show the same location being rebuilt and reoccupied over hundreds of years. But here is the part that doesn't get talked about enough. None of this worked alone. Every single survival strategy your ancestors had, fire, hunting, clothing, shelter, only worked inside a group. A lone human in the Ice Age was a dead human. Groups shared warmth. Groups coordinated hunts. Groups watched children while others gathered food. Groups carried knowledge across generations. How to start a fire, where the reindeer migrate in winter, which routes survive under snow, how to read weather before a storm hit. If one person discovered a better technique, everyone learned it. If one group found a valley with game, they told others. Information traveled, knowledge accumulated, and that accumulation, slow, steady, passed from parent to child for thousands of years, is what built the wall between humans and extinction. They also moved. They followed the animals, tracked seasons, mapped territories in their heads covering thousands of kilometers. And this is the period when humans walked into Australia for the first time, when a group crossed a land bridge between Siberia and Alaska, a bridge that only existed because sea levels were so low, and became the first people to ever set foot in the Americas. Your ancestors didn't just survive the Ice Age, they used it to colonize the entire planet. And underneath all of it, the fire, the clothing, the hunting, the shelters, the migration, was one thing: the brain. Not bigger muscles, not thicker fur, not faster legs. The brain. Humans are not built for cold. Physically, we are a tropical animal. Thin skin, no natural insulation, slow compared to almost everything that wanted to eat us. By every physical measure, we should not have survived what the Ice Age threw at us. But we could think ahead. We could imagine a problem before it happened and solve it in advance. We could teach our children skills that took years to learn, so they didn't have to start from zero. We could cooperate, not just in pairs or small families, but in networks, in groups, across distances, in a way no other animal on Earth could match. Every other species in the Ice Age was just trying to get through the day. Humans were planning for next winter. The ice eventually retreated. Around 12,000 years ago, the glaciers began pulling back. Sea levels rose. The great herds of megafauna disappeared. Some hunted to extinction. Some lost to the changing world. Everything your ancestors had spent thousands of years learning to survive stopped existing. And they adapted to that too. They planted crops, domesticated animals, built permanent settlements. Everything that came next, farming, cities, writing, every piece of the modern world came directly from the people who spent thousands of years figuring out how not to die in the cold. If you dropped a person alive today into the Ice Age with no tools and no knowledge, they would be dead within days. You would not know how to start a fire from scratch. You would not know how to read animal tracks, make a needle from bone, or find food under 2 feet of snow. But if you dropped one of your Ice Age ancestors into the modern world, they would figure it out, because they were not primitive. They were not lesser. They were fully human, with the same brain you have right now, pointed at a problem that would break most people alive today. They just had a much harder version of the game, and they finished it.